It was just a dog, the officer muttered with a smug shrug, his hand still resting near his holster, as if nothing he had done carried any weight. 10 minutes later, 30 Navy SEALs would surround his cruiser, and that same man would realize he had just crossed a line that could never be undone, because the quiet black woman he dismissed was never as powerless as she seemed. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The afternoon sun stretched long golden shadows across the quiet suburban street, the kind of neighborhood where nothing ever seemed to happen and everyone believed they were safe. Angela Brooks walked at an unhurried pace along the sidewalk, her posture straight, her expression calm, her presence almost blending into the stillness around her. In one hand, she held the leash of a large German shepherd, Rex, whose steady footsteps matched her own with quiet discipline. The dog was alert but relaxed, his ears twitching occasionally at distant sounds, his loyalty anchored entirely to the woman beside him. It was a simple routine, one Angela valued more than most people would understand. After years of living in environments where every sound meant something and every silence could be dangerous, this peaceful walk was her way of holding onto something normal. The faint scent of freshly cut grass drifted through the air, and somewhere down the block, a lawn mower hummed lazily, adding to the illusion that this street existed far away from conflict. Angela's gaze moved subtly, not out of fear but habit. She noticed the slight movement of curtains in a nearby window, the slow passing of a car at the intersection, the distant bark of another dog several houses away. Her awareness was quiet, controlled, the kind that did not draw attention but missed nothing. Rex paused briefly near a patch of grass, sniffing with casual curiosity, and Angela allowed him the moment, her grip on the leash loose but ready. "Easy, boy," she said softly, her voice low and steady, carrying the kind of calm authority that did not need to be raised. Rex responded instantly, falling back in a step beside her without hesitation. To anyone watching, she was just another woman walking her dog. No urgency, no tensión, no reason to look twice. But beneath that surface was a composure shaped by something deeper, something earned. The world, however, had a way of disturbing even the most peaceful moments. And as Angela continued down the sidewalk, unaware of the approaching shift in her afternoon, a black and white cruiser turned slowly onto the street behind her, its presence subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. Almost. The cruiser rolled forward at a deliberate crawl, its engine humming low, tires whispering against the pavement as if stalking rather than patrolling. Angela felt it before she turned, that subtle shift in the air, the unmistakable weight of attention pressing against her back. She did not stop walking. She did not tense. But her awareness sharpened, every sense quietly aligning. Rex noticed it too. His ears flicked backward, his head turning slightly as a soft, almost inaudible growl built in his chest. Angela gave the leash the faintest tug. "Easy," she murmured again, her voice calm, grounding. The cruiser pulled alongside her, keeping pace, the driver's window sliding down with a mechanical where that cut through the stillness. Officer Ryan Cole leaned slightly toward the open window, one arm resting casually on the door, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting her figure back at him like an object under inspection. "Afternoon," he called out, his tone carrying a forced politeness that barely masked the edge beneath it. Angela stopped then, turning slowly to face him, her posture relaxed, her expression neutral. "Good afternoon, officer," she replied evenly. Cole's gaze moved from her face to the dog, then back again, lingering just a second too long. He pushed the door open and stepped out, boots hitting the pavement with a heavy, deliberate sound. The air seemed to tighten around him, his presence filling the quiet street in a way that felt intrusive, unwelcome. "That your dog?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. "Yes," Angela said. "His name is Rex." Cole circled slightly, not close enough to touch, but close enough to assert himself, his eyes narrowing as he studied the German shepherd. "Big animal," he muttered. "You got papers for him?" Angela blinked once, slow, controlled. He is licensed and vaccinated, yes. Cole smirked faintly, as if amused by her composure. That is not what I asked. I said, do you have the papers on you? There was the shift, subtle, but unmistakable. Angela met his gaze without flinching. No, officer. I do not carry those documents when I take him for a walk. Cole clicked his tongue, shaking his head as if disappointed. That is a problem, he said, his voice hardening. We have had reports of aggressive dogs in this area. Last thing we need is someone losing control of an animal like that. Rex stood still beside Angela, his posture disciplined, eyes alert but not hostile. He did not bark. He did not lunge. He simply watched. Angela's grip on the leash remained steady. He is not aggressive, she said calmly. He is trained. Cole let out a short laugh, humorless. They are all trained until they are not. He took a step closer now, his hand hovering near his belt, his body language shifting from casual to confrontational. Why don't you step back and let me take a closer look, he ordered. Angela did not move immediately. The pause was brief, but it was enough. Cole's jaw tightened. That was not a suggestion, he added, his voice dropping lower, sharper. Around them, the quiet neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. A curtain across the street shifted again. Somewhere a door closed softly, but no one stepped in. No one spoke. Angela finally took a single step back, not out of fear, but calculation, her eyes never leaving his. Rex remained at her side, unwavering. Cole crouched slightly, leaning in toward the dog, his expression twisting into something more aggressive, more certain of his authority. Let us see how trained he really is, he muttered, almost to himself, as the tension between them thickened, stretching tighter with every passing second. Officer Ryan Cole leaned in closer, his shadow stretching over Rex as his presence pressed down like a challenge. The dog did not retreat. He did not bark. He simply stood, muscles steady, eyes locked on the man in front of him with a quiet, controlled awareness that spoke of discipline rather than threat. Cole's lips curled slightly, as if disappointed by the lack of chaos. Go on, he muttered, lowering his voice, almost coaxing. Show me something. Angela's gaze sharpened, but her tone remained even. Officer, you are escalating a situation that does not exist. Cole straightened slowly, turning his head just enough to glance at her, his expression shifting into something colder. You telling me how to do my job now? He asked, the edge in his voice unmistakable. Angela did not respond immediately. The silence stretched, deliberate, measured. I'm telling you, she said finally, each word precise, that my dog is under control. Cole let out a dry laugh, shaking his head as if amused by her composure. That is what they all say, he replied, stepping even closer, closing the remaining space between himself and Rex. His hand hovered near his belt, fingers twitching with restrained impatience. Funny thing about control, he continued, voice low and taunting, it only takes 1 second for it to break. Rex shifted his weight slightly, not forward, not aggressive, just enough to adjust his stance as Cole invaded his space. A soft, warning rumble built in his chest, barely audible, but present. Cole's eyes lit up at that. There it is, he said sharply, seizing on the moment. You hear that? That is aggression. Angela's grip tightened just a fraction on the leash. That is a warning, she corrected calmly. Because you are too close. Cole ignored her completely. Instead, he leaned in further, extending his hand abruptly toward the dog's face. Not to pet, not to test, but to provoke. Rex reacted instantly, stepping forward a single pace, placing himself between Angela and the officer, his body now a barrier. The leash pulled taut. Angela moved with him, maintaining balance, her posture still composed, but her voice firmer now. Step back, she said. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Cole froze for half a second, then slowly turned his head toward her, disbelief flickering across his face. Excuse me, he asked, his tone rising, offended by the command. Angela did not repeat herself. She simply held his gaze, unwavering. The tension snapped tighter. Cole's jaw clenched, his authority challenged in a way he was not used to. Not here, not like this. You do not give me orders, he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet street. His hand dropped fully to his belt now, fingers brushing the grip of his weapon, not yet drawing, but no longer casual. That dog is a threat, he declared, louder now, as if announcing it made it true. And I'm going to handle it. Angela's eyes flicked briefly to his hand, then back to his face. He has done nothing, she said, her voice steady, grounded, refusing to match his escalation. Cole took one more step forward, pushing the situation to the edge, his posture rigid, his expression set. We are about to find out, he said, his voice low, final, as the fragile line between control and chaos began to disappear. We are about to find out, Cole repeated, and this time there was no hesitation in his movement. His hand closed firmly around the grip of his weapon, pulling it free in one sharp motion that sliced through the quiet afternoon like a warning bell no one could ignore. The metallic click echoed, louder than it should have, amplified by the stillness of the neighborhood. Angela did not flinch, not when the weapon came up, not when Cole's posture shifted fully into control, his stance widening, his voice rising with authority he believed was unquestionable. Get that dog under control, he barked, though Rex had not moved beyond that single protective step. The leash remained taut, Angela's grip steady, her presence grounded in a calm that did not match the chaos he was trying to force into existence. He is under control, she replied, her tone even, measured, almost quiet against the sharpness of his commands. Lower your weapon. That single sentence hung in the air between them, heavy, defiant without ever raising its voice. Cole's eyes narrowed, something darker flashing behind the mirrored lenses. You do not tell me what to do, he snapped, his finger tightening along the side of the trigger guard. That animal is a threat. Rex shifted again, a subtle repositioning, placing his body slightly more in front of Angela, his instincts clear, his loyalty absolute. A low growl rumbled again, not loud, not aggressive, but enough. Enough for Cole. There it is, he shouted, seizing on it like proof. Aggressive behavior. I knew it. Angela's voice did not rise. It did not break. You are provoking him, she said. Step back, and he will settle. But Cole was no longer listening. The situation had moved beyond reason in his mind. This was no longer about a dog. It was about control, about dominance, about being challenged in a way he could not tolerate. Drop the leash, he ordered suddenly, his tone sharp, final. Angela did not move. The silence that followed was not hesitation. It was refusal. Cole took a half step closer, the barrel of his weapon now angled, directly toward Rex. I said drop it, he repeated, slower this time, each word edged with warning. Angela's fingers tightened slightly around the leash, the only visible sign of tension in her entire body. No, she said. One word. Calm. Unshaken. The kind of answer that did not escalate but did not submit. Cole's jaw flexed, his patience snapping under the weight of his own ego. Around them, unseen eyes watched from behind curtains, from parked cars, from doorways left slightly ajar. No one stepped in. No one spoke. The moment stretched, fragile, on the edge of something irreversible. Rex's gaze never left Cole, his body still, his breathing controlled, every instinct focused on the man holding the weapon. Angela stood behind him, steady, silent, her presence a quiet anchor. And for one brief second there was still a choice. Cole could have stepped back. He could have lowered the weapon. He could have ended it there. But arrogance has a way of drowning out reason. His fingers shifted. The tension broke. The sound that followed shattered the illusion of peace, echoing through the street in a single, violent crack that could never be taken back. The crack of the gunshot echoed down the quiet street, sharp and final, cutting through the stillness like a line that could never be crossed back over. Rex's body jerked once, the tension that had held him steady dissolving in an instant as he collapsed onto the pavement at Angela's feet. The leash slipped from her hand, falling loosely beside him. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. No wind, No movement, just silence pressing in from all sides. Angela did not scream. She did not lunge forward. She stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on Rex, her breathing shallow but controlled, as if her body refused to process what had just happened. Cole lowered his weapon slowly, exhaling as though he had just completed a routine task. "That is what happens," he said, his voice carrying a cold, self-assured finality, when an animal becomes a threat. His words hung in the air, detached from reality, spoken like justification rather than acknowledgement. Angela knelt then, slow and deliberate, her movements precise, almost careful, as if sudden motion might shatter something fragile. Her hand reached out, resting gently against Rex's side, her fingers pressing into his fur, searching for something that was no longer there. Her face remained composed, but her eyes had changed. Not with panic, not with hysteria, but with something deeper, something that settled quietly, heavily, beneath the surface. Cole watched her for a second, then shifted his weight, already moving on in his mind. "You were lucky I handled it before it got worse," he continued, holstering his weapon with a practiced motion. "That dog could have hurt someone." Angela said nothing. Her hand remained on Rex, her posture steady, grounded in a stillness that felt almost unnatural given the moment. The neighborhood remained frozen around them. Curtains no longer moved. Doors stayed closed. Witnesses watched from a distance, but no one stepped forward. Cole glanced around briefly, then back at her, irritation flickering across his face at her silence. "You need to control your animals," he added, his tone shifting into something almost lecturing, as if he were correcting a minor mistake. "Next time, it might not end this clean." Angela's fingers tightened slightly against Rex's fur, the only visible response. Then, slowly, she lifted her head. Her gaze met his, calm, unwavering, empty of fear. Cole hesitated for just a fraction of a second, something in that look catching him off guard, though he could not place why. He dismissed it quickly, straightening his posture, reclaiming his sense of authority. "I'm going to need your identification," he said, as if the situation had simply reset to procedure. Angela did not reach for anything. Instead, she shifted slightly, her hand leaving Rex as she rose to her feet with the same measured control she had shown from the beginning. She stood facing him now, the space between them charged with something unspoken. "Is that necessary?" she asked quietly. Cole scoffed. "After what just happened?" "Yeah, it is." Angela studied him for a long second, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Not hurried, not frantic, just deliberate. Cole frowned slightly, his patience thinning again. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Angela's thumb hovered over the screen for only a moment before she made the call. When she spoke, her voice was steady, almost calm enough to be mistaken for ordinary. "They killed him," she said. "No explanation, no emotion, just fact." Then she ended the call. Cole stared at her, confused, annoyed, completely unaware of that end. That quiet, controlled moment, everything had just begun to change. The call ended, and for a brief moment, the street returned to that same unnatural stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something neither of them could yet see. Officer Ryan Cole let out a short, dismissive scoff, shaking his head as he shifted his stance, already deciding how this would end. "Yeah," he muttered, almost amused, "that is not going to help you." He reached toward his belt again, this time not for his weapon, but for his handcuffs, the metal glinting faintly in the afternoon light as he pulled them free with a practiced flick of his wrist. The sound of them clicking open was deliberate, intentional, meant to assert control, to remind her exactly who held power in this moment. "Turn around," he ordered, his voice sharp, authoritative, leaving no room for discussion. Angela did not move. She stood there, facing him, her posture straight, her expression calm in a way that no longer felt passive. It felt deliberate, measured. Cole's irritation surfaced immediately. "I said turn around," he repeated, louder this time, taking a step closer, closing the distance between them until his presence felt invasive, overwhelming. "You are being detained." Angela's eyes held his, steady and unblinking. "For what?" she asked quietly. Cole's jaw tightened. "For obstruction," he snapped. "For failing to comply. For having a dangerous animal." He gestured vaguely toward Rex without looking down, as if the reality of what lay at their feet was already behind him. "Take your pick." Angela's gaze flicked briefly downward, just once, acknowledging Rex in a way that was silent but final. Then she looked back at Cole. "You still have time to walk away from this," she said. Her voice was low, controlled, carrying none of the panic or anger he expected. Just certainty. Cole blinked, caught off guard for a fraction of a second, then let out a dry laugh. "Walk away," he repeated, incredulous. "Lady, I'm the one handling this situation." He stepped closer again, lifting the cuffs slightly, letting them dangle between them like a threat made visible. "You do not get to tell me what to do." Angela did not react to the cuffs. She did not step back. "You do not understand what you have done," she continued, her tone unchanged, each word landing with quiet weight. "And you definitely do not understand who you just involved." Cole's expression hardened, annoyance turning into something sharper, more defensive. "Oh, here we go," he said, rolling his eyes slightly. "What? You're going to call a lawyer? File a complaint? Go ahead. I have paperwork for days." He shook his head, dismissing her completely. "You people always think there is someone you can call." Angela's gaze did not waver. "There is," she said simply. The certainty in her voice lingered, heavier now, but Cole brushed past it, his patience gone. "Enough," he snapped, stepping in close enough to reach for her wrist. His grip was firm, controlling, as he moved to pull her arm behind her back. "Turn around." Now, Angela allowed the movement, but not because she was submitting. There was no resistance, no struggle, just a controlled compliance that somehow felt more unsettling than defiance. As Cole positioned the cuff around her wrist, she spoke one last time, her voice calm, almost quiet enough to be mistaken for a whisper. "You should have listened," she said. Cole smirked, tightening the cuff with a sharp click. "Yeah," he replied, leaning in slightly, his tone dripping with arrogance. "And why is that?" Angela's eyes met his one final time, steady, unshaken. "Because they're already on their way." Cole let out a short, mocking laugh, straightening up as if the statement meant nothing. "Good," he said, snapping the second cuff into place. "They can watch you get arrested, too." And with that, he secured her hands, completely unaware that in choosing to laugh, he had just closed the last door that could have saved him. The second cuff clicked into place, the sharp metallic sound sealing what Officer Ryan Cole believed was control, authority, finality. But then something shifted. It started as a distant vibration, low and unfamiliar, rolling through the quiet neighborhood like distant thunder. Cole frowned slightly, his grip still firm on Angela's arm, his head tilting as the sound grew louder, deeper, more deliberate. Angela did not react. She did not turn. She did not even look up. Her gaze remained forward, calm, as if she had been expecting this moment down to the exact second. The vibration became a roar. Wind stirred along the street, lifting dust, rustling leaves, pulling at loose fabric. Cole's eyes widened as the first helicopter crested over the tree-line, black, fast, unmistakable. Then another, and another. The rhythmic chop of rotor blades filled the air, swallowing the silence whole, replacing it with something overwhelming, something precise. Military. Cole instinctively stepped back, his hand loosening on Angela's arm as his attention snapped upward. "What the hell?" he muttered, the confidence in his voice faltering for the first time. The helicopters did not pass. They slowed. They circled. And then, almost in perfect synchronization, they descended just beyond the houses lining the street, their presence no longer distant but immediate, undeniable. Doors slammed open. Heavy boots hit the pavement. Figures moved with speed and coordination that spoke of training far beyond anything Cole had ever encountered. Within seconds, the quiet suburban street was no longer quiet. It was occupied. 30 Navy SEALs moved into position with silent efficiency, their formation tightening around the cruiser, around Cole, around the entire scene. Weapons were not raised recklessly, but they were ready, controlled, precise. Every movement had purpose. Every step had weight. Cole's breath caught. His hand dropped completely from Angela's arm now, the handcuffs suddenly feeling less like control and more like a mistake. A catastrophic one. "What is this?" he demanded. But the authority in his voice was gone, replaced by something strained, uncertain. No one answered him, because no one needed to. The line of operators parted slightly as one man stepped forward, his presence commanding without effort. Commander Marcus Brooks. His eyes did not scan the scene. They locked immediately onto Angela. Then, slowly, they dropped to Rex lying motionless on the pavement. The air seemed to tighten again, but this time, it was different. He walked forward, each step measured, controlled, carrying a weight that did not need to be announced. When he reached Angela, his gaze softened just slightly, just enough. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice low, steady. Angela shook her head once. "No, that was all. No explanation. No emotion. Just truth." Marcus nodded, then reached forward and, without hesitation, unlocked the cuffs himself, his movements calm but final. The metal fell away from her wrists like something that had never belonged there. Only then did he turn his attention to Cole. And, when he did, the shift was immediate. Cole felt it, the weight of it, the kind of presence that stripped away every illusion of control he had been holding on to. "You fired your weapon," Marcus said, his voice even, but carrying something far more dangerous than anger. Certainty. Cole opened his mouth, but no words came out at first. His throat felt dry, his thoughts scrambling to catch up to a reality that no longer made sense. The dog was aggressive, he managed, the words sounding weak even to himself. Marcus did not respond right away. He simply looked at him, and in that silence, Cole understood something for the first time. This was not a situation he could talk his way out of. This was not a report he could write, or a narrative he could control. This was something else entirely. Something final. Angela stood beside Marcus now, her posture unchanged, her expression calm, but her presence different. No longer just a woman walking her dog. Now, unmistakably, someone at the center of everything unfolding around him. And Cole, standing there in the middle of 30 Navy SEALs, finally saw it, finally understood. And by the time that realization settled in, it was already far too late. The realization had barely settled into Officer Ryan Cole's mind when the shift in control became absolute. 2 Navy SEALs moved forward with precise, synchronized steps, their presence silent but overwhelming. Before Cole could react, his arms were firmly secured behind his back, not with aggression, but with an efficiency that left no room for resistance. His own training, whatever confidence he once carried, felt small in comparison to the discipline surrounding him now. "Wait, hold on," Cole stammered, his voice cracking under pressure, his earlier arrogance nowhere to be found. "You cannot just, this is my scene, I was responding to a threat." His words sounded hollow, even to himself. Commander Marcus Brooks did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "You discharged your weapon without cause," he said evenly, each word landing with a weight of final judgment. "You detained a civilian without justification. And you killed a service animal under your protection." Cole's breath hitched. "Service animal," he repeated, the phrase catching his throat as his eyes flicked toward Rex, then back to Angela, then finally to Marcus. The pieces were falling into place now, but far too late to matter. Marcus stepped closer, his gaze unrelenting. "That dog," he continued, his tone unwavering, "was trained alongside some of the finest operators in this country. You did. Not just shoot a pet." The implication hung heavy in the air. Around them, the operators maintained their positions, the perimeter locked, every movement controlled, every exit sealed. The neighborhood, once quiet, was now a silent witness to the complete dismantling of a man who had believed himself untouchable. Cole's knees nearly buckled as the weight of his actions finally pressed down on him. "I did not know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, stripped of authority, stripped of certainty. Marcus did not respond with anger. That would have been too easy. Instead, he turned slightly, gesturing once. Another officer stepped forward, this one not in tactical gear, but in a federal jacket, credentials already visible. "Officer Ryan Cole," the man announced, his voice clear, official. "You are being taken into federal custody, pending investigation for excessive use of force, unlawful detention, and violation of civil rights." The words echoed louder than the gunshot had. Final. Documented. Real. Cole's head snapped up, panic now fully visible in his eyes. No, you do not understand. I was following protocol. His voice broke as the agents began to move him toward the cruiser. No longer a symbol of his authority, but a cage waiting to close. Doors that once opened at his command now stood as barriers he could not control. Angela stood a few steps away, her posture unchanged, her expression calm, watching without satisfaction, without visible emotion. Justice, for her, was not loud. It did not need to be. It simply was. As Cole was guided past her, he hesitated for the briefest second, his eyes searching her face for something, anger, validation, anything that might make sense of what was happening. But she gave him nothing. No acknowledgement, no reaction, just silence. And that silence was heavier than anything else. The cruiser door opened. He was placed inside, the same confined space he had used countless times before, now closing around him with a final, unmistakable weight. Outside, the line of Navy SEALs remained steady, unshaken, their presence a living reminder that power, real power, had never belonged to him at all. The cruiser door slammed shut with a hollow, final sound, sealing Officer Ryan Cole inside a reality he could no longer control. For a moment, no one moved. The tension that had filled the street began to dissolve, not abruptly, but slowly, like a storm losing its grip on the sky. The helicopters above eased their rotation, lifting slightly, their presence no longer aggressive but watchful, as if ensuring the moment had truly passed. The operators held their positions for a few seconds longer, then, one by one, began to step back, their formation loosening with the same discipline it had been built with. Control had been restored. Justice had been delivered. And now, the world was allowed to breathe again. Angela stood where she had been, her attention no longer on the cruiser, no longer on Cole, but on Rex. The noise, the movement, the authority surrounding her faded into the background as she knelt once more beside him. Her hand rested gently against his side, her fingers tracing the familiar line of his fur, her expression calm, but heavy with something unspoken. Commander Marcus Brooks approached quietly, his presence no longer sharp, no longer commanding, but steady, grounding. He stopped beside her, looking down at Rex, his jaw tightening for just a brief moment before he exhaled slowly. "We will take care of him," he said, his voice low, respectful. Angela nodded once. No hesitation, no questions. She understood exactly what that meant. A nearby operator stepped forward with care, not as a soldier now, but as someone handling something sacred. Rex was lifted with dignity, not rushed, not treated as evidence, but as something that had mattered, something that still did. Angela rose to her feet, her movements as composed as they had been from the beginning. But now, the street around her had changed. The same neighbors who had watched from behind curtains began to step outside, slowly, uncertain at first, then with quiet respect. No one spoke loudly. No one intruded. But their presence shifted. The silence was no longer fear. It was acknowledgement. Marcus turned slightly, gesturing once, and the remaining SEALs began to withdraw, their mission complete. Vehículos reposicionados. The helicopters lifted higher, their sound fading into the distance, leaving behind a quiet that felt different now. Lighter, cleaner. Angela took a single step forward, then another, moving past the place where everything had changed. She did not look back at the cruiser. She did not look at Cole. There was nothing left there for her. Marcus fell in a step beside her for a moment, then paused, letting her continue alone. "Angela," said softly. She stopped, turning her head just slightly. "We are here," he added. She met his gaze, her expression steady. "I know," she replied, and that was enough. She turned again, walking down the same street she had started on, her pace unhurried, her posture unchanged. The sun still cast long shadows across the pavement. The air still carried the scent of cut grass. But something invisible had shifted. Not everything broken could be restored, but something had been set right. And as Angela disappeared down the quiet street, the world, for the first time since that single irreversible moment, felt still again. Not empty, not silent, but at peace. There's something deeply unsettling about how quickly authority can turn into illusion. Officer Cole believed control came from a badge, from a weapon, from the ability to make decisions without question. But what this moment revealed is that power without discipline is not strength, it is exposure. Every choice he made narrowed his world until there was no room left to step back, no space left for humility to enter. Angela, on the other hand, never raised her voice, never fought for control in the way he understood it. Her strength came from certainty, from knowing exactly who she was and what stood behind her, even when the world refused to see it. And perhaps that is the quiet truth this story leaves behind. Real power does not need to announce itself, and it certainly does not rush to prove itself. It waits, it watches, and when the moment comes, it does not react with chaos, it responds with precision. What happened on that street was not just a reckoning for one man, but a reminder that actions, once set in motion, have a way of revealing truths we were never prepared to face. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.